Many people get confused in life by what they do versus who they are. And a lot of times, what somebody does starts to actually become their identity. And so for me, I think that's a really slippery slope there where you start to lose yourself in what it is that you do, and you lose the most important part of who you actually are or why you started to do what you do in the first place, right? So for me, first and foremost, I'm a man of God, I'm a husband, I'm a father. And so what I do, being an entrepreneur, having a construction company, coaching people, being part of a digital marketing company, those are all things that I do. But who I am is really at the core of that, right? And so some of the ways that I remind myself of who I am is that every single morning I write down a list of things that I'm grateful for. And I often remind the people that I coach, like, the material things that I achieve from being in business, from having success, those things, they don't make that list. What kind of car you drive or what kind of things you're able to buy, those things don't make that list of gratitude. But the love of my children, spending time with my wife, the memories that we're able to make in life, who you are becomes more and more clear as you write down the things that you're grateful for. And so for me, that exercise every single morning reminds me of who I am. And so I never really lose myself in what I do. What I do is just a part of who I am. It never really takes that over. And I think that's a really important thing for people to remember. I think that so often we get caught up in this rat race today of trying to become something professionally and really losing ourselves in that process. And so for me, it's always been really important to have that daily exercise of writing down exactly what I'm grateful for to remind me every single day of who I am and who I'm trying to become and what really, really is important to me in my life. And having that foundation of what's really important to me in my life and who I am actually makes me better in what I do, because those rewards that I get from what I do benefit those things that are most important to me and really support who I am at my core. So how I want people to know me, first and foremost, I often think I read a book once that talked about if you really want to live a life of fulfillment, then think about what you would want people to say at your funeral, right? If you were to have somebody you worked with, one of your family members, a friend speaking at your funeral, what would you want those people to say? That has always been kind of, top of mind for me, is like, who do I actually want to be? And do those actions that I'm taking every single day line up with that? And so for me, it's, a person that helps people, a person that was a great family person, went above and beyond for those people who were important in their life, was a good friend, a good husband, a good father, a good son. All of those things are really kind of how I want to be defined. Of course, I want to be successful in business, but those things, the success factor falls in well behind all of the other things. And I think that many times people get those things flipped. They think that somehow if they become successful, that those other things kind of fall into place, and that's the opposite of how it actually works. If you don't have that foundation of who you want to be being clear to you, how you want to be remembered or what you want people to know you for, then success it gets a little bit harder for you to achieve it, because you don't actually have those things in line. You don't have the values, the foundation of your life really aligned properly. So I think it's really important for people to remember, how would you want people to speak about you at your funeral? And if you can think about that and you can work your life backwards to actually achieve those things that you want people to say, life gets pretty simple. If you don't have those things in order, life gets pretty difficult and challenging. So I would think about that. If you haven't ever thought about that, what do you want people to say? And then how do you live your life on a daily basis that allows you to actually achieve that? One of the most frustrating things I think that happens to anybody in today's world is the approach of cold emails or cold DMs or cold text messages of people that don't actually know you, trying to do business with you, and sending you a 3-page novel of why you should be doing business with their company when you have no idea who this person is, or if they're even telling you the truth, maybe if they even have the company that they're talking about in some cases, because I feel like some of the messages that I get probably aren't even real things. They're just trying to get money from somebody, and their company might not even exist. You're probably going to send money to a company that doesn't actually exist on the planet. So, When you think about that, one of the things that I teach our team all the time is lead with something simple, lead with value, lead with education, lead with the intention of building a relationship before you ever try to do business with somebody. Because for you to actually create a real relationship, you make a friend, you make a sale. And the most important part of that whole process there is actually building the relationship, making the friend first, and then the selling part takes care of itself. If you can solve a problem for somebody that likes, trusts, and respects you, then doing business with them is just a sensible next step, as opposed to something that you have to do a lot of convincing to make happen. So it is critically important for you to build a relationship with people first. If you want to have a good reputation, to build a relationship with somebody, to be able to show them value, to be able to maybe produce videos that show kind of how you solve people's problems, and then being able to share something that gets them looking at you, looking at your company, and then let the value take the lead in guiding the relationship and converting that from a friendship to a business relationship. But it's really critically important for you to build a relationship with someone before you ever try to sell them something, or you will probably not have a successful transaction in the end anyway if you're trying to sell something to somebody that you don't even know. So the easiest way to create a great business relationship, or to create any friendship, or to create any meaningful relationship, is to actually learn some things about the other person. And so the way that you learn things about another person is by asking great questions, by listening, by having meaningful conversations, by being prepared for those conversations that you're about to have. One of the things I was just talking about this morning with a group of people was going into a conversation with intention, right? Actually having meaningful questions that you can ask to somebody, because if you can ask meaningful questions, you're going to get to know that person at a different level than most people do. And if you're a great listener and you can listen for those things that they're saying, maybe you're listening for some of the things that they're not saying that you can probe about and ask questions to create an even more meaningful conversation. And those things, they lead to many, many times lifelong friendships or lengthy friendships, great business relationships. But it all starts with just genuinely taking interest in the other person. And one of the things that I say often is, are you trying to be interested, or are you trying to be interesting? And so if you're trying to be interested in the other person, it takes a lot of listening, it takes a lot of conversation, it takes a lot of asking questions to be able to do that. And when you walk away from that conversation, you're going to feel really good about it, because you're going to know a lot about that person. And many times, if you're doing a great job of listening, you're probably going to know a lot more about that person than they learn about you. And that's going to leave them more curious for the next conversation that they have with you, because they probably want to know more about you if you know quite a bit about them and they don't know nearly as much about you. So it's a great tip to just listen, be inquisitive, have meaningful questions prepared. If you're planning in advance of a conversation, it makes a lot of sense for you to have questions that you have already thought of that might be meaningful. And if you can do research on a person that tells you kind of what their interests are, that can spark some meaningful conversation, that's a great idea too. But if you really want to make an impact with somebody, you really want to have a great relationship, getting to know them through asking questions and really listening is the greatest way to do that. When it comes to who you are, how you want to be viewed, how you want to be remembered, all those things come down to how you look at yourself, or how you frame yourself in every conversation, in every interaction that you have, whether that be online, in person, through a conversation, through a text message. Remember that every single thing that you do is being looked at, is being evaluated by people, being judged, some people might say. But how you're going to end up being viewed comes down to how are you intentionally framing yourself. And I think a lot of people don't put enough thought into that. How do you actually carry yourself? How can things be perceived? There's a lot of things that I say, and I think to myself, man, I wish I would have said something different there, or I wish I would have framed that conversation a little bit differently. And if you pay attention to those interactions over time of you repeating those conversations, you're going to get a lot better at having those conversations being framed the right way, and then people walking away from those conversations with you feeling the way that you intended them to feel. One of the things that I try to do all the time is have an intention of how I want to leave somebody feeling during an interaction. And so if you do that, if you enter every conversation with an intention of how you'd like that other person to leave it feeling, many times you're going to be successful at that. So it's a great way for you to get to know other people, for you to be framed properly, for people to walk away from conversations looking at you the right way and feeling themselves exactly how you wanted them to feel.